on some airlines that we have arrived or we are leaving ahead of schedule times. We are starting just a minute ahead of schedule. Thank you very much on behalf of Raza Foundation and the IIC. We welcome you here this evening to yet another session of Art Matters. This is the 13th, is it? 15th. 15th, sorry. There have been so many that one keeps. And this time we are discussing culture and politics. In some sense, the whole country is discussing culture and politics, without meaning to be so, perhaps. I mean, the relationship between culture and politics for centuries has been rather tense, creative, uneasy, comfortable, depending on what times they are and what kind of people there are. I sometimes think that India till 19th century, the idea of India, the notion of India itself was essentially in culture and hardly in politics. And one of the things that has happened in the 20th century seems to be that we have been looking for unity of India, the so-called unity of India, through politics rather than through culture. And that creates already a kind of a problematic. In freedom struggle, there was, of course, a constant dialogue between culture and politics. And some of the major figures of the freedom struggle, some politicians, from Gandhi to Nehru, Lohia, Sri Aurobindo, Azad, etc., were also cultural figures. Today you can't accuse any politician of being a cultural figure. He's all kinds of other figures, but not cultural. Even though he may once in a while pretend to being somewhat cultured. In fact, if you look at the, soon there will be manifestos galore. All the parties will be coming out from manifesto. And I noted this publicly, wrote about it last time also, that one item which does not figure in any manifesto is culture. There's a lot about markets, about economy, about this, that, and the other, about even the disabled, about OBCs, about this, that, and the other. But nothing, no party has anything to say on culture. That might be a lucky situation, that they leave us alone. Don't interfere too much. Now, one can argue that there is a culture of politics itself, and that, sadly, there is also a politics of culture. That culture is not entirely devoid of its own intrinsic politics, and politics also cannot be accused to be lacking in its own culture. There are so many organizations which claim themselves to be cultural organizations. One of the primary organizations which calls itself cultural is RSS, which is perhaps registered also as a cultural organization, for all I know, if it is registered or not. It has nothing to do with culture. In fact, it is bang at the center of politics. Now, is politics influencing culture so much that not in dialogue, but in domination? We were recently trying to get a statement endorsed by some of the top-notchers in various fields about the situation in the country. And we found, sadly to our dismay, that whereas there are writers and intellectuals and poets and theatremen and artists forthcoming, only one classical dancer has endorsed that statement. And the classical musicians and classical dancers keep away. This is not their field. So whatever may be the situation, however grave or grim it may be, they will keep quiet. The plurality, which is the let's say, the hallmark of Indian, the imagination of India, is even now more embodied and enacted more forcefully in culture rather than in politics. In any case, it looks as if, what Yeats famously said, and Krishen would remember it, things fall apart the center cannot hold. The best lack all conviction, and the worst are full of passionate intensity. Maybe this is an exaggerated poetic description of our situation. So we are not talking of culture and politics in a vacuum. It's a very obvious context in which panel discussion is taking place. We have 4 eminent persons belonging to 4 different fields. We have Krishen Khanna, who has been one of our outstanding artists, but has time and again expressed himself politically. We have Dileep Padgaonkar, who knows politics quite closely, but also knows culture quite deeply. We have D.P. Tripathi, who is a member of the Rajya and who, of course, do not claim to be a cultural personality, but over the years, his parties are famous. But the parties are famous not only for the fact that there are so many politicians. He invariably always had cultural people also be part of his party. So he has kept a dialogue with culture, but he is in politics. Also, knowing culture, some of the most important people in culture are his personal friends. And we have a young academic, not so young, although he looks rather grey-haired now, but he's young because it's over. So some people have their hair turn grey just to impress that they have achieved a level of seniority and maturity. Apoorvanand, who is a professor of Hindi literature, is therefore the Hindi academic from Delhi University. We had, of course, Mani Shankar Iyer also to come and speak to us, but he had some other engagement. The politicians always have some other engagement. So this other engagement kept him away. So here we are, and the rules of the game are simple. Oh yes, let me give the flowers first. I'm forgetting that. Thank you. Well, the rules of the game are this. Each one of the panelists will speak for about 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll allow some time to converse between themselves if they need to. After that, it will be open to you to make brief comments. Brevity remains the soul of wit. That which you cannot say briefly, you better not say it. So there you are, and we'll start with Dileep Padgaonkar. You can sit there.
Thank you. The ends of politics are obvious enough: to acquire influence, authority, power. But the ends of culture are obscure. Broadly speaking, producers of culture, and I refer here to the arts and humanities, seek to give meaning to the ill-chaotic realities of the world, to reflect them in the light of their own knowledge, experience, insights, and skills. In the process, they provide us, the consumers of culture, an opportunity to expose ourselves to novel modes of thinking, of seeing, of hearing, of feeling. There is, of course, a context in which both politics and culture evolve. Social, economic, and psychological factors, with their baggage of history and tradition, are always at play in this evolution. But their significance is more obvious in politics than it is in culture. Resorting to causality or determinism hardly helps. What was avant-garde once became part of the mainstream later. This happened, for example, to Cubism in painting, to Joyce in literature, and just about half a century ago, to the French New Wave in the cinema. So clearly, to discuss the subject is vast and as complex in its scope as the relationship between politics and culture within a span of 12 minutes, or maybe 14, is a foolhardy experience. It has spawned a huge body of literature on this subject. So huge, in fact, that nobody in his senses can claim familiarity with even a small bit of it. Yet, it pops up in public debates, whether in forums like the present one or in the media, and it generates endless controversies that rarely, if ever, clarify the issues at stake. My purpose, therefore, is going to be modest. And modesty, as you know, is not necessarily my virtue. I should do no more than state the ways political power and increasingly a technology-driven globalized market have harnessed culture to serve their ends, often at the expense of the moral, social, and aesthetic imperatives of cultural activity. And in the context of our own country, I shall say a thing or two about a menace that threatens politicians, marketers, and cultural aficionados alike. Vigilante groups who run amok on the grounds that a particular film, play, painting, sculpture, work of fiction, or an essay has, quote, hurt their sentiments. Let me begin with a reference to Eric Hobsbawm's posthumously published book, Fractured Times, Culture and Society in the 20th Century. In a number of closely argued essays, this brilliant historian analyzed the three primary demands that power makes on art and which absolute power makes on a larger and more devastating scale. The first was to demonstrate the glory and triumph of power itself, through, for example, erecting monumental buildings, statues, and sculptures. That has been the practice from the days of Machiavelli to the days of Behan Mayawati. Just about every major city in Europe, for example, boasts of monumental arches and imposing buildings that house government offices, function as music or concert halls, and as museums. Newton's Delhi is a classic example of the conceits of empire builders expressed in brick and mortar. Statues of royalty, statesmen, soldiers, and occasionally also poets and painters and writers are another common sight in several thousand cities across Europe and across Asia. Kumari Mayawati statues, along with those of Baba Sahib Ambedkar and Kashiram, dot Uttar Pradesh's landscape. There is a competition to erect the tallest statue of Shivaji Maharaj and Sardar Patel and of the members of the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty, not to mention the construction of a magnificent temple to Lord Ram in Ayodhya. Architects and sculptors have thus been summoned to perform these tasks, much like painters were once summoned to paint portraits of the nobility and of the potentates of the church. The second aim was to organize rituals and ceremonies such as military parades with massive musical bands in tow in a lavish manner, and this to impress people. This has been done not only by the Italian fascists, German Nazis, Stalinists, and Maoists, but also by democracies. Take the floats during our Republic Day parade and similar parades held in Moscow, Paris, or Berlin. The intent clearly is to display both military might and national unity. And here, performing artists, folk artists, and the breed, now known as event managers, have been recruited for these tasks. The third objective, and this one is germane to our discussion this evening, has been to use culture for propaganda purposes, ranging from extolling the leader to upholding the unquestioned supremacy of the state and the unquestioned claims of nationalism. The German Nazis thus roped in the services of filmmakers like Leni Riefenstahl, of philosophers like Martin Heidegger, to demonize Jews and liberals, communists and atheists, and to extol the Führer's genius. Much the same thing happened in Mussolini's Italy, in Franco's Spain, under the Vichy regime in France, and the regimes of Stalin and Mao, and a number of third world tin pot dictators, not to speak of various autocrats in the Arab Muslim world. Here too, examples can be cited of an extreme disdain for culture from the political establishment in totalitarian countries. Take the bonfire of books by the Nazi regimes in the early years when they were in power. Take two, Mao's Zedong's cultural revolution, Pol Pot's extermination of the intelligentsia, and the Taliban's offensive against all forms of art. The fascist and Stalinist onslaught against the avant-garde, Dadaism and Surrealism, Cubism and Futurism, suprematism and abstraction, modernist forms of literature, Joyce, Musil and Kafka, and new creative endeavors in films such as Eisenstein, the humanities such as the Frankfurt School, even design such as the Bauhaus, is the most obvious manifestation of the testy relations between politics and art. A caveat, however, is in order. Fine poets like Ezra Pound, or writers like the French Drew de la Rochelle or Céline and P.G. Wodehouse also rallied to fascist causes, but on their own volition. These exceptions, however, are few and far between. But authoritarian regimes and authoritarian leaders in a democracy have been intolerant of innovations in the arts. Autocrats in Latin America, Africa, Central Europe, and Asia routinely pampered sycophantic artists, writers, and thinkers, and equally routinely imprisoned, tortured, killed, or banished into exile those who refused to fall in line. Consider in our own country what transpired during Indira Gandhi's emergency. It did not produce a single play or film, a single poem, painting or novel that outlived its duration. The two exceptions, execrable exceptions, was a film called Kissa Pursika and Hussein's depiction of Indira Gandhi as a goddess. Take next the harassment of Salman Rushdie and Taslima Nasreen by bigots of one community, the attacks on Hussain for his depiction of Hindu divinities by bigots of another community, the ransacking of the Bhandarkar Institute in Pune over the controversy about a biography of Shivaji by regional chauvinists and castists, or again, much closer to our time, Mamta Banerjee hounding a cartoonist for showing her in a poor light. If only she knew that cartoonists never show anyone in a good light. How does one explain such transgressions? I believe two factors can provide some tentative explanation. One is identity politics gone completely awry, and the second is egomania, which assumes often perverse proportions. This, and I refer to what Ashok just said, is a far cry from the robust cultural activities we witnessed during the struggle for independence. Much of the inspiration for it was Mahatma Gandhi, and left and liberal ideologies. The IPTA is an example, as is, say, the progressive movement in Bombay. Those sources of inspiration continue to exert their influence on films and theatre and literature in the first 2 decades at least after independence, sometimes through state-sponsored institutions like the academies or the Bharat Bhavan in Bhopal in its heyday under Ashok, or the National Film Development Council. We would never have had a Manikol or a Kumar Shahani without the NFDC. But without the NFDC, we also had the early Raj Kapoor and the early Bimal Roy films. The relationship between politics and culture is therefore marked by paradoxes that need to be factored into a discussion like this one. We were fortunate enough to have leaders, and again I refer to what Ashok said a while ago, like Jawaharlal Nehru and even Indira Gandhi, who were at ease in a modern cosmopolitan culture, even as they drew legitimate pride in our classical arts. Nehru admired, for example, Le Corbusier, André Malraux, and Roberto Rossellini. And Indira Gandhi was known to be very fond of Satyajit Ray, Ritik Ghatak, J. Swaminathan, as she was of Shiv Bhatta and Ivan Illich. Today, however, in our celebrity and entertainment-driven culture, kitsch reigns supreme. The paradox is also evident among so-called capitalists who run the global economy. In the United States, for example, the Rockefellers and the Guggenheims promoted the arts through philanthropy. They created museums, donated the works of classical and modern artists to them, gave artists and humanities scholars stipends. Perhaps they did so for reasons of pecuniary gain or status that the association with so-called high culture brings. We in India, however, haven't experienced much of this yet. Our capitalists will start schools and universities and hospitals and build temples, but with singular exceptions like the House of the Tatas and Infosys, for example, they won't invest in the arts and the humanities. Much has been said and said critically of the impact of a globalized market economy. Since its main aim is profit, and since profit comes from economies of scale, it is argued, there is going to be an inevitable homogenization of mass culture. Or, to put it in another way, of a culture, though rooted in a specific environment that can be marketed with a maximum appeal to consumers. One has been reading increasingly critical remarks of the so-called diasporic novels in this regard. There certainly is some merit in this view, but we must factor in all the nuances. Cultural industries are doubtless concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. That is true of book publishing, of the art scene, of films and television. Homogenization threatens, so the argument runs, authentic creativity. The much maligned market, however, makes enough space available for innovation. This is particularly true of the entertainment business. Independent-minded fiction and non-fiction writers and filmmakers, for instance, are able to succeed in the global market. So do, to a lesser extent, painters. The ones who don't quite make the grade are poets, folk artists, and those who confine their work to regional languages and regional cultures. Meanwhile, there is no let-up in interest in classical music. And here's another paradox. Even the most authoritarian regimes, whether the left or the right, never really bothered the classical arts. So here are the factors that need to be considered. The state, through its censor boards and its cultural institutions, has become lenient. The market, despite its profit-driven intent, is proving to be more receptive to innovation. Again, in India as elsewhere, traditional culture gets subsidies from the government and increasingly from the corporate world. Yet, both have to contend, especially in democracy, with another phenomenon. And this is going to be the last point I'll be making. This phenomenon is the mushroom growth of forces that mobilize mass opinion in the name of hurt sentiments to envy engage in a de facto censorship. Neither politicians nor corporate groups dare to define them. The former stand to lose their votes, the latter their profits. Is there a way to overcome these paradoxes? I believe there is. I can cite examples where politicians and capitalists can acquire more seats and perhaps make more money. Just consider the anti-establishment films and plays and works of fiction and non-fiction that have succeeded in the marketplace, especially and increasingly so in our so-called vernacular languages. And so the relationship between politics and culture will continue to witness moments of a difficult cohabitation, unless, of course, politics gets harnessed to dogma and culture gets harnessed uniquely to the bottom line of the balance sheet.
Sorry.
I'll wait. And of course, far more ominous is the possibility of both politics and culture getting harnessed to dogma and to commerce alike. That danger lurks on our horizon today. One last word. I believe that when pluralism triumphs, politics triumphs, culture triumphs. When pluralism triumphs, the idea of India triumphs. That, I believe, is the last rampart that we'll have to defend. Thank you.
DP Tripathi. You can take the mic there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, after the great presentation by Dileep Padgaonkar from cinema to market to what I call culture being used as tools of legitimization and propaganda by the state power.
स्पीकर थोड़ा ऊंचा कर लीजिए.
And अभी ठीक है? हाँ? हाँ. Another aspect about the relationship between politics and culture. Instead of repeating those arguments, I will try to make certain observations in the presence of this distinguished audience as a political activist of more than 40 years. I must admit that I'm a bit scared of this audience. You're very distinguished. But there are 2-3 observations which are important in the present context. The world is both lovable and livable because culture as the identifiable aspect of human life and even of nations is far more important than other aspects of these types of identification, like religion, ethnicity, state, and likes. That is why Indonesia is different from Saudi Arabia. Argentina is different from Spain. India is different from China, although we are from the same continent. Big countries, great civilizations, long histories. Yet, because the culture is in many ways the defining aspect of human existence, is specificities, whether the national identity or the ideas of various civilizational structures which are called countries, like Ashok Vajpayee mentioned. See, India is specific in one sense, which the historians perhaps not noticed that well, that we have the cultural awareness of countryhood before the advent of the modern nation states. That is one aspect which is extremely important. Then coming to that aspect of culture, from architecture, sculpture to cinema to painting and poetry, which was used as adulation of various power icons, whether of the state, politics, or church, or spirituality, or even the great leaders of the market, so to say, in different stages. I'm not going into the details deliberately, but the culture which has given direction to politics, and politics which has given direction to culture. This is interesting. The moment you go into the study of India's freedom struggle, which has been mentioned by Ashok and Dileep, is that they all give direction to politics, and politics is given direction by the culture. Look at the great debate between Tagore and Gandhi. I'm not getting into the entire thing. And Ashok said that politicians have never been cultural icons. I think politicians throughout the world, if you look at them, especially those who conducted the great movements of rebellion and opposition against injustice, they have been great cultural figures. As late as 2 decades ago, I don't think there were any better cultural luminaries than E.M.S. Namboodiripal, so on and so forth. I can count many names. And to my mind, it is very unpopular, though, to say the political leaders throughout the world have been the best intellectuals. I mean, I can give many examples. I'm not getting into that debate at the moment. But what Dileep said is important is this continuous, if I can use that maligned word for just expressing the reality, is the continuous dialectical relationship between culture and politics. There's politics of culture, there's culture of politics, and there is politics guiding culture and culture guiding politics. Like interaction among the various human activities, which is extremely important. And when you talk of culture, apart from the European experience of movement from sacred to secular and the Renaissance and so on and so forth, just come to the Indian reality of the Bhakti movement, which has not been mentioned by the two illustrious speakers before me. The Bhakti movement in many ways is giving direction to the entire society and therefore to politics also. It is a great rebellion through spirituality, where the cultural consciousness goes beyond the state and the powers of the government and the ruler. Where Tulsi Das can say, "Hum chakar Raghuveer ke pateo likho darbar, Tulsi abka hoinge, nar ke man sabdar." You're going beyond all forms of governance and the power of the rulers and so on and so forth, and their palaces and monuments and whatnot. All the power, paraphernalia and pelf related to the state structure is demolished by the great cultural awareness of the Bhakti movement. And it transcends the hierarchical structure of the social oppression also. If you look at the entire Bhakti movement in India, I'm being very brief and as quick as possible in my observations, that there are only 3 to 4 upper caste people in the entire Bhakti movement among your great celebrated saints. And one of them is blind fellow, Surdas, therefore he should be counted among the backward and oppressed. Yes, of course. And one is the woman, that is Meera, so she should also not be counted among the upper caste according to Lohia. Women were considered backward, and rightly so. No, because they need liberation. And that's why Lohia said, "Sau mein saath" meant women first. They should get reservation first for upward mobility in the society. And nobody else except Tulsi Das, you find 1 or 2. All others are OBCs or backward, whatever the social categories or caste to define them in the entire Bhakti movement. Your Bhakti movement is not medieval in that sense, it is modern in many ways. Look at the entire, I mean, I can go on quoting, I'm not getting into that detail. But Bhakti movement, because it has made not merely our minds, our languages, except Sanskrit and Tamil, all the languages we speak, all the attires we wear, all the food that we eat, all the dishes that we like. So it is all part of our existence which has been produced by that Bhakti movement, then our freedom movement. Then the radical movement is rightly mentioned by Dileep, very rightly. Look at the contribution of IPTA. And finally, without again taking much of your time, I hope I am not exceeded the time limit.
About to, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I will conclude without taking. The entire state structure, for example, wherever it has been most oppressive, it has produced one of the great aspects of culture, especially poetry and literature. You couldn't have had perhaps fires without the gauls and the opposition to dictatorship and the kind of poetry. The only thing that our generation experienced was when there was a choice before us when we were young, whether to support a dictatorship or oppose it during the emergency. And the kind of literature which was written in the jails during the emergency, though not very celebrated, but is still, it is a great expression of desire for freedom, for liberty. Look at any part from Pablo Neruda to La Pasanoria to anyone. I used to read Dileep's writers on Euro-communism and fight against the dictatorship in Europe and all that, those days, in my younger days. So I'm saying, look at the way literature, art and culture have developed in fight against all kinds of authoritarian and totalitarian states. Look at Arthur Koestler's Darkness at Noon, such a wonderful work of fiction. Now, I take William Blake's observation that the foundations of empire is art and science. Remove or degrade them, and the empire is no more. So I take it other way also. The oppressive and authoritarian, totalitarian states and their governments create that urge of liberty, desire of dreams that creates the wonderful and exemplary cultural expressions in various forms, from architecture, painting to literature. And finally, as far as the Indian essence of culture and politics is concerned, even today I would say there are two Hindi words, rather concepts, which explain both politics and culture. If it is devoid of it and goes into the new kind of Jujavad and the social and political oppression, which has been mentioned rightly indicated, I would say, by Dileep, by Mayawati's construction of all those statues and all, and making, of course, wonderful parks in Lucknow and other places, which I admire those parks, but nonetheless. But what is the attitude is the new forms of oppression, social oppression, and therefore the total lack of democratic political culture, which looms very large in countries like ours and many other societies, can be fought only, as I said, by defending plurality. The moment you talk of plurality, it is many, not any, which will determine our lives. And therefore, Samanvay and Samavesh, these are the two conceptual words which should and which really define our politics and culture. I seldom repeat, though, lines from poets, but I am tempted to repeat two lines from Firak, which really describe India's culture, triumphal march of history, and politics. And these two lines are, Sarzamine Hind par Aqwam-e Alam ke Firak, Sarzamine Hind Aqwam-e Alam ke Firak, Karwan aate rahe, Hindostan banta raha. Banta gaya.
I'm reminded of a phrase by Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet who died recently. He had a book which was called Government of Tongue. the government of tongue. He took the phrase from a John Donne poem. So not only that there is a government with a state power and this, that and the other, there is also a government of language, of tongue, of poetry, of creative expression. Anyway, now Apoorvanand.
शुक्रिया। अब तक संस्कृति पर और संस्कृति और राजनीति के रिश्ते पर जिस तरह से बातचीत हुई है, उसमें संस्कृति का एक विशेष अर्थ लिया गया है जो ठीक ही है। यानी संस्कृति से आशय उन तमाम तरह के उत्पादनों से है जो हम नृत्य, रूपंकर कलाओं, साहित्य, संगीत आदि में देखते हैं। और ये संस्कृति हैं, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं। लेकिन मैं संस्कृति के एक दूसरे पक्ष की ओर आपका ध्यान दिलाना चाहूँगा और वहाँ से अपनी बात शुरू करना चाहूँगा। और वो रेमंड विलियम्स ने संस्कृति को जिस तरह परिभाषित किया, जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि संस्कृति प्रथमतः आपाततः साधारण है। और इसलिए संस्कृति को यदि हम सिर्फ कुछ कलाकृतियों, साहित्यिक रचनाओं आदि के माध्यम से ही समझने की कोशिश करेंगे तो संभवतः एक बहुत बड़े हिस्से को जनता के भूल जाएंगे जो रोजमर्रा के कामों में सांस्कृतिक काम ही करती रहती है। यह इसलिए भी मुझे याद आया कि खुद हिंदी के बड़े सांस्कृतिक दार्शनिक और चिंतक हजारी प्रसाद द्विवेदी ने एक बार यह लिखा कि हमारी संस्कृति का भव्य प्रासाद लाखों करोड़ों मनुष्यों के रक्त में डूबा हुआ है। और जब वो ऐसा कह रहे थे तो दरअसल उनका तात्पर्य यह था कि जिसे हम संस्कृति समझते हैं, यानी जो मुखरता संस्कृति हमें देती है, उस मुखरता की कीमत हजारों हजार साल बहुलांश को अपनी मूकता से देनी पड़ी है। वे सब खामोश रहे हैं, इसलिए हम कुछ लोग बोल पाए हैं, या यह कहा जा सकता है कि इस मुखरता से उन्हें बहिष्कृत रखा गया है या उन्हें बाहर किया गया है। और अगर पिछले कुछ दशकों में के इतिहास को उठाकर देखेंगे, नजदीक के इतिहास, तो यह दिखलाई पड़ेगा कि यह मूकता या यह खामोशी अब टूट रही है और वहां से मुखरता फूट रही है। और यह कुछ इस किस्म की है कि पहले से बनी हुई जो परिष्कृत मुखरता थी, जिसके हम आदी रहे हैं, उसमें खलल पड़ रहा है। और हमें ऐसा लगता है कि यह जो एक सांस्कृतिक परिष्कृति बनी हुई थी, यह सांस्कृतिक परिष्कृति अब सुरक्षित नहीं रह गई है। मैं 20वीं शताब्दी के अंतिम 3 दशकों के इतिहास से लेकर अब तक के इतिहास को देखने की कोशिश करूंगा। मायावती का नाम लिया गया और मैं यह प्रस्तावित करना चाहूंगा कि जिन्हें हम राजनीति से जुड़े हुए पद कहते थे, जैसे न्याय, बराबरी, स्वतंत्रता, अब ये सारे पद अगर किसी एक प्रिज्म से होकर गुजरते हैं और समझे जा सकते हैं तो वो प्रिज्म है पहचान का या अस्मिता का प्रिज्म। अस्मिता के पद में ही अब न्याय, बराबरी, स्वतंत्रता को पहचाना जा सकता है। इसलिए समाज अब जो अपने आप को संगठित कर रहा है या राजनीति ने जो भाषा अपनाई है वह दरअसल सांस्कृतिक भाषा है। और इसलिए आरंभ में जो प्रस्ताव किया गया था, मैं उससे थोड़ा सा अलग जाते हुए ये कहना चाहूंगा कि पिछले दशकों में हम जो कुछ देख रहे हैं वह एक प्रकार से सांस्कृतिक राजनीति है। संस्कृति एक नए ढंग से राजनीति को संगठित कर रही है। हम यह भी कह सकते हैं कि राजनीतिक दबावों ने अपने ढंग की और अपने काम के लिए एक खास तरह की संस्कृति को उत्पादित किया है। और इस संस्कृति को समझने में हमें थोड़ा समय लग रहा है। अंततः संस्कृति से हमारा आशय क्या है? संस्कृति उस प्रकार की मानवीय प्रक्रिया को कह सकते हैं जो हमें अपना अर्थ सृजित करने में मदद करती है। हम सब प्राकृतिक प्राणी हैं, लेकिन मनुष्य सांस्कृतिक प्राणी है, और वह इसलिए कि वह अपने खास अर्थ पैदा कर सकता है। यह खास अर्थ पैदा करने की इजाजत किन लोगों को रही है? खास अर्थ पैदा करने का मतलब यह है कि जिस दिए हुए समुदाय में मैं पैदा हुआ, उस दिए हुए समुदाय को मैं बदल सकता हूँ और अपना नया समुदाय बना सकता हूँ, और दी हुई परिभाषा को मैं अस्वीकृत भी कर सकता हूँ। जिस संदर्भ में हम लोग आज बात कर रहे हैं वह संदर्भ पूरी दुनिया में राष्ट्र राज्य की अवधारणा पर तरह तरह के दबावों के पड़ने का संदर्भ है। यानी राष्ट्र राज्य उतना आश्वस्त नहीं है, उतना सुरक्षित नहीं है, उतना निश्चिंत नहीं है, उसे तरह तरह के तनावों से गुजरना पड़ता है। भारत के बारे में भी जिस तरह कहा जाता है कि दरअसल भारत पहले एक सांस्कृतिक इकाई था और एक था, और बाद में वह राजनीतिक इकाई हो गया, और वो यह भूल गया कि उसकी बुनियाद सांस्कृतिक थी, इस वजह से उसमें दिक्कतें पेश आ रही हैं। उनके बरक्स मेरी समझ यह है, और जो बहुत सारे विद्वानों की समझ है, कि यह हमारी एक रोमांटिक भूल थी यह समझना कि भारत एक सांस्कृतिक इकाई के रूप में मौजूद रहा है। जो तनाव अब उत्तर पूर्व में दिखलाई पड़ रहे हैं, या जो तनाव भारत के मध्य में दिखलाई पड़ रहे हैं, जिन्हें हम आदिवासी विद्रोह के नाम से जानते हैं, और जिनका सिर्फ एक प्रतिनिधित्व माओवादी करते हुए दिखलाई पड़ते हैं मुख्य रूप से, और तभी हमें आदिवासी समझ में भी आते हैं के जरिए। इन तनावों को इतने दिनों तक हम लोग क्यों नहीं देख पाए? इन अस्मिताओं को हम इतने दिनों तक क्यों नहीं देख पाए? क्या इसलिए कि हमने इन्हें संस्कृति के दायरे में रखा ही नहीं था, और संस्कृति की हमारी समझ एक सीमित समझ थी, जिसमें हम खुश थे, निश्चिंत थे, क्योंकि हम रोज रोज संस्कृति उत्पादित कर रहे थे, और हमें ऐसा भी भ्रम था कि राज्य को इस संस्कृति से किसी प्रकार का कोई खतरा है। बावजूद उस प्रकार के झड़पों के, जिनका जिक्र दिलीप ने किया और ठीक ही किया, जिसमें राजनीति और संस्कृति के बीच एक तनाव मालूम पड़ता है, सिनेमा हॉल पर पत्थर फेंके जाते हैं, फिल्में रिलीज नहीं होने दी जाती हैं, एम.एफ. हुसैन की कलाकृति को प्रदर्शित नहीं होने दिया जाता है, यह सब कुछ है। लेकिन अगर इन सारे आक्रमणों को आप सिर्फ इस एक तथ्य के सामने रखकर देखिए, जो कुमुद पवाड़े की आत्मकथा में व्यक्त हुआ है, जिसमें कुमुद पवाड़े ने यह बताया है कि उन्होंने संस्कृत पढ़ना कैसे सीखा। कुमुद महाराष्ट्र की एक दलित लड़की है, बाद में वो कुलपति होकर सेवानिवृत्त हुई, लेकिन उस दलित लड़की को, जिसे संस्कृत, जो भारत की संस्कृति का सर्वश्रेष्ठ दाय लेने का दावा करती है, उसे उस संस्कृत तक पहुंचने में जो मशक्कत झेलनी पड़ी, जो आंसू गिराने पड़े, जो अपमान झेलना पड़ा, और उन अपमानों को झेलते हुए संस्कृत सीखते हुए वो संस्कृत की विदुषी बनी, उस पूरी कहानी को पढ़ते हुए हमें मालूम पड़ता है कि क्यों जिस संस्कृति पर आक्रमण से हम इतना ज्यादा परेशान हैं, उससे भारत की बहुलांश जनता का कोई लेना देना नहीं है। वो क्यों नहीं उससे विचलित होती है? इसलिए कि वह अब तक उससे बाहर रखी गई है। इसलिए मैं सिर्फ यह कहना चाहता हूं कि संस्कृति को हम एक सकारात्मक अर्थ में ही न लें। संस्कृति वह सब कुछ है जो हम रोजाना अपनी जिंदगी में करते चलते हैं। और इसलिए मेरी समझ यह है कि पिछले दिनों भारत में जो कुछ हुआ है और हो रहा है, और जिसे समझने की हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं, वह सब कुछ सांस्कृतिक है। यहाँ से कुछ 150 किलोमीटर दूर मुजफ्फरनगर में 1 महीने तक जो कुछ हुआ, वो एक सांस्कृतिक कार्रवाई थी। अशोक जी ने ठीक ही शुरू में कहा कि इस देश का जो सबसे बड़ा सांस्कृतिक संगठन अपने आप को कहता है, राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ, उसने हाल में सबसे बड़ी राजनीतिक कार्रवाई की है। उसने इस देश का प्रधानमंत्री कौन होगा यह तय करने का काम किया, और खुलेआम किया है। इसलिए संस्कृति राजनीति को संगठित कर रही है, इसमें कोई दुविधा नहीं है। मुजफ्फरनगर भी अपने आप को पुनर्गठित कर रहा है, मुजफ्फरनगर के समुदाय पुनर्गठित कर रहे हैं। और दशकों से हमारी जो समझ थी कि ग्रामीण अंचलों में सांप्रदायिकता जैसी शहरी, आशीष नंदी बैठे हुए हैं, शहरी और एनोनिमस, जहां आपसदारी, पड़ोस की संभावनाएं कम हैं, और इसलिए सांप्रदायिकता जैसी आधुनिक बीमारी के पनपने की गुंजाइश ज्यादा है सांप्रदायिक हिंसा की। वह सांप्रदायिक हिंसा मुजफ्फरनगर के गांवों में इतने भयंकर ढंग से कैसे फैली। लेकिन यह समझने में हमें गलती क्यों हुई, क्योंकि इसके कुछ महीने पहले ही असम में अगर मुजफ्फरनगर में 70,000 मुसलमान शरणार्थी कैंपों में रह रहे हैं, तो असम में 1.5 लाख से ज्यादा, 2 लाख से ज्यादा मुसलमान बोडो और मुसलमानों के संघर्ष में कैंपों में रह रहे थे, और वो 1.5 साल से ज्यादा। उस दरमियान राभा और मुसलमानों में जो संघर्ष हुआ, उसके बाद मुसलमानों का पलायन बहुत बड़ी संख्या में हुआ। तो उसके बहुत पहले भागलपुर के गांवों में और दर्जनों गांवों में मुसलमानों की हत्या हुई थी। इसलिए हमारा एक भ्रम स्वयं भारत की सांस्कृतिक स्वरूप को लेकर जो भ्रम रहा है, उस भ्रम को स्वयं जनता ने बीच बीच में तोड़ा है, इस हिंसा के जरिए भी, जिसको मैं सांस्कृतिक हिंसा कहना चाहूंगा, क्योंकि यह समाज का पुनर्गठन करने की एक कोशिश है, वो समाज को फिर से गठित कर रही है। और राजनीति का काम चूंकि समाज को एक खास ढंग से संगठित करना है, राज्य को एक खास ढंग से संगठित करना है, राज्य की नीतियों को एक विशेष स्वरूप देना है, इसलिए यहाँ मुझे संस्कृति और राजनीति में एक खास तरह का तालमेल दिखलाई पड़ता है। यह कहा जा सकता है कि यह राजनीति द्वारा तैयार की गई संस्कृति है, लेकिन यह दिलचस्प है कि राजनीति अब पूरी की पूरी सांस्कृतिक पदावली में हो रही है, उससे अलग नहीं हो रही है। और शायद इसका कारण यह है कि संस्कृति को संवेदनाओं का क्षेत्र कहा जाता है, भावनाओं का क्षेत्र कहा जाता है, और जब राजनीति, खासकर लोकतांत्रिक राजनीति, जन गोलबंदी पर आधारित ही है, जब तक वो लोगों को गोलबंद न कर ले तब तक वो सफल नहीं हो सकती। और लोगों को गोलबंद करने के लिए, उनके दिल को छूने के लिए संस्कृति के अलावा दूसरी भाषा नहीं है। इसलिए जिस भाषा का प्रयोग भारतवर्ष में पिछले 30 वर्षों में हो रहा है, वह भाषा मुख्य रूप से प्राथमिकता सांस्कृतिक है। और हम अगर इससे विचलित हैं और इसको समझ नहीं पाए हैं और आगे इसे समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, तो इसका कारण शायद उस चूक में है। और यहाँ मैं अपनी बात खत्म करना चाहूँगा, उस संवाद को आगे न बढ़ा पाने की असफलता में है, जो संवाद 1950 के आसपास आदिवासियों के बुद्धिजीवियों के एक समूह ने जवाहरलाल नेहरू, सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल, मौलाना आजाद, सरोजिनी नायडू आदि से करने की कोशिश की थी, जिसमें उन्होंने यह कहा था कि दरअसल आप जिस राष्ट्र राज्य की कल्पना कर रहे हैं, वह राष्ट्र राज्य हमारा नहीं है। आपका संविधान हमारा संविधान नहीं है, आपका भारत हमारा भारत नहीं है। लेकिन उन्होंने इस बात की इच्छा व्यक्त की थी कि हम इस भारत में हिस्सा लेना चाहते हैं, और इसके लिए उन्होंने यह प्रस्ताव दिया था कि इसके लिए आवश्यक यह होगा कि आप अपने राष्ट्र राज्य को सख्त न रखें, आप उसे नरम रखें, आप उसे तरल रखें, और आप उसमें इसकी संभावनाएं रखें कि वो निरंतर अलगावों का, सेसेशंस की संभावना उसमें हो। यानी एक वेव सेसेशन का आएगा, दूसरा वेव सेसेशन का आएगा, और फिर वो लोगों को री इनवाइट कर सके। और जो प्रस्ताव था उस ट्राइबल 5 का, जिसे शिव विश्वनाथन ने उस कहानी को फिर से कहते हुए ट्राइबल 5 कहा है, ट्राइबल 5 का प्रस्ताव यह था कि आप भारतीय राष्ट्र को एक ऐसा लचीला राष्ट्र राज्य बनाएं जो लोगों को इस बात की सुविधा दे कि वो जब चाहे इसमें आए और जब चाहे इससे निकल जाए। जाहिर है कि यह बात सरदार पटेल की समझ में बिल्कुल नहीं आई, वो बिल्कुल ही अधीर हो उठी। सरोजिनी नायडू तो बहुत ही अधीर हो उठी, और उन्होंने एक बार ट्राइबल 5 को कहा कि आप दरअसल अलगाववाद की बात कर रहे हैं, और इस पर काफी हंगामा हुआ। नेहरू को थोड़ी बहुत यह बात
माफ करिएगा, आपकी बात कब समाप्त होगी?
सुनिए, ये तो आपने करिएगा, नियमन मैं कर रहा हूँ, आप बैठिए।
बाद में बोलिए।
अध्याय भी एक सांस्कृतिक चीज ही है। मैं सिर्फ ये कह रहा था कि यह जो प्रस्ताव उन्होंने दिया था, जो सुनने में बहुत ही अव्यावहारिक प्रतीत होता, हाँ, और पंडित नेहरू इसे समझने का प्रयास कर रहे थे, संभवतः इसलिए कि जो ट्राइबल फाइट थे और वे भी कोलंबिया यूनिवर्सिटी के और लंदन स्कूल ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स के पढ़े हुए लोग ही थे, और पंडित नेहरू समझने का प्रयास कर रहे थे कि मेरी भाषा इनकी भाषा से इतनी अलग क्यों है। लेकिन पंडित नेहरू ने उनसे अनुरोध ये किया, अभी हम एक बहुत बड़े खून खराबे से गुजरे हैं, बंटवारा हुआ है, और हमें थोड़ा स्थिर होने का मौका दीजिए, और आप एक बार फिर आइए। और उन ट्राइबल 5 को डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स लिखने की दावत दी गई, जो उन्होंने बहुत मेहनत करके लिखा। एक चीज उन्होंने याद दिलाई, और यहाँ मैं अपनी बात खत्म कर देना चाहूंगा इसके पहले कि कोई और उठकर वह यह कि उन्होंने पूरे समूह को कहा, हमारे राष्ट्रीय नेताओं को, उन्होंने कहा कि आपने एक शब्द सुना होगा जिस शब्द का आविष्कार ट्रूमैन ने किया है, और यह शब्द है विकास, डेवलपमेंट। और यह प्रेसिडेंट ट्रूमैन द्वारा आविष्कृत शब्द है, डेवलपमेंट। ट्राइबल 5 ने हमारे इन राष्ट्रीय नेताओं को कहा, और उन्होंने कहा कि हम आपको सिर्फ चेतावनी देना चाहते हैं कि आने वाले दशकों में आपका यह डेवलपमेंट दरअसल लाखों करोड़ों लोगों को विस्थापित करेगा और सेसेशंस की कई वेव्स पैदा करेगा। उससे आप कैसे निपटेंगे, इसके बारे में आप सोच लीजिए। और मुझे लगता है कि आज 60-65 साल के बाद इस कहानी को एक बार फिर ठीक से सुने जाने पर हमें शायद अपने इन तनावों को समझने और उनकी व्याख्या करने में थोड़ी सी मदद मिले। मैंने थोड़ा ज़्यादा वक्त लिया, माफ़ी चाहता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
On this subject of the interrelationship between art and culture. Not an academic, nor am I in politics in any way whatsoever. However, I can only narrate a few instances where I've had occasion to be associated with what one might call political ventures. And the latest one, which is still not finished, began about 8 years ago, was the monument to be created by a high-powered committee of government, which was created. And various artists over this period were seconded to this committee. For the object of the committee was the making of a monument dedicated to Gandhiji's Salt March, and the associates, the people who walked with him, were also to be included or mentioned or whatever. I mean, they were to be taken into account. And this has been going on, and various artists were in it, and they jumped out because nothing was happening. And finally, I was also brought in to this thing. I had some ideas which they were well received in a committee kind of fashion, but nothing happened. And the committee has just gone on becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, but there's no sign of any monument taking place. I think the center is a little worried about this thing. And finally, I also resigned. I told them that really this is not the way you set about making a monument. You are making committees, you're not making monuments, And they said, and this has happened before. I mean, there's a certain pattern which one observes. There was a committee which was set up in the National Gallery of Modern Art, for instance, to advise on the procedures to be followed and what actions were to be sort of laid down, and which we did. It was a very good committee which was made at that time. And finally, when all this, we did a lot of work for that, and making it, giving it a very comprehensive kind of an outlook, the whole thing. And then we were told, you are only an advisory committee, and what you say may or may not. And it was not. You see? So this is, these are two rather humiliating situations which one has had to deal with. The other one was during the Pakistani war, and I was involved with raising money by getting works of art were being auctioned at Triveni Kala Sangam. And there was a friend of mine who was then the spokesman of the army, and he was ill and lying in bed, and he heard this thing going on over AIR in those days, I think. And when I reached home, he called me. And he said, well, that was a very interesting thing you're doing. Now, idea occurs to me that it might be a very good thing if you could muster up your friends and some of you go to the front to paint pictures of the valor of the Indian Army and so on and so forth. So we were in Nizamuddin, which was then the kind of pivotal place for artists, writers, musicians and so on. Everybody stayed there. So that evening I went and saw Hussain, I saw Ram Kumar, I saw Tayyib Mehta, and I was the fourth. So four of us, we all agreed we'd do that. We landed up in Amritsar, we went to various points of the battle which was taking place, or had taken place. Actually, it was just a day after that we went there. And they were hoping that we would be painting, pictures of the glorious Indian Army, waving flags and so on, but nothing of that. I mean, sort of the humanist became paramount. And you saw, for instance, we were having our sandwiches or something in a field, and there was a tank nearby, and Ram Kumar walked up to this tank and came back after a little while with a postcard in his hand. And this postcard had been written to this man who had been killed in this thing by some relatives, saying, expressing great desire to see this man, and he was wandering around. He wondered, kahan hai aap? And Ram had this, that. And finally, we go over to another village, and Ram wrote a wonderful piece on this thing, that there was nothing, only the dogs were barking for their lost masters, I mean, there's a horizon of dogs barking for their masters. We went to Burki, where we saw, bookshops turned upside down and so on, and I saw a Quran lying there on the floor, so I picked it up, and I thought I'd return it to whoever it was. And paintings were done of destitution and horrid thing. I mean, they just would not be acceptable to any kind of military victory or military pomposity or whatever you like to call it. So that was that. But I mean, they intended one thing, but something else happened. But the history of art is actually replete with such incidents. And one very important one is the one which Bruegel was a famous artist, very well known Flemish painter, and he painted. When he painted, the Netherlands were they were ruled by the Spaniards. I mean, there's a great Spanish influence at that time, and there was a rebellion against them, and they were merciless in these things. And there were two pictures I remember very distinctly. One was the Massacre of the Innocents. When he did this picture of the Massacre of the Innocents, it was actually a cover-up for what was happening to them. But he didn't get persecuted as a result. He saved his skin. But he did it all the same. He made it known that this is so. This is the Massacre of the Innocents. Whether they were the biblical innocents or whether they were the Flemish people who were being targeted. And another thing that he wrote was there was another painting of the Tower of Babel, because everybody was speaking different languages at the same time. Nobody understood what anybody else was saying. So I mean, in our more recent times, in our own country, there have been such instances as well, where you never know what's going to happen. And the painting, several paintings I did of the teeth of the state, actually. These were conveniently thought to belong to Germany or something, and it wouldn't apply to us, of course, because we are gentlemen. And so this painting finally found its way, without any effort on my part, I might say, but it found its way into in the German museum, in the Jerusalem museum of the atrocities which were committed by the I didn't paint it with that in mind, but it got there. But these things happen. It's happened not once, it happened several times, because you shove off any reflection or anything you think is a reflection on you. It's palmed off to somebody else. You see, they're much worse than us, so to speak. I don't think art can ever make things happen. We've gone on shouting and writing and all sorts of things, and wonderful things happen. I mean, out of the Spanish Civil War, for instance, there was a great movement against it. Writers, poets, our own Munchausen went there as well. W.H. Auden was there and wrote his famous poem in 1947, Spain, 1947, which ends rather sadly, actually. Even he gives up on that. There's the stars are dead. The animals will not look, and we are left alone with our day. And history to be repeated may say, alas, will not help or conquer. Such is the kind of feeling that if you're wanting to achieve, you're making all sorts of gestures or intended gestures that people will see, and you can rectify things, but nothing practically ever happens, I don't think. I mean, all those wonderful paintings which Goya did, or Guernica, for instance, it hasn't stopped any wars. It hasn't done. There's no practical thing which comes out of it at all. And yet we like Guernica, and we admire very much Goya's paintings of the executions and so on. But that's the impulse of the artist, because you want to do things, you want to change. And if you really want to change, then I think other methods have to be adopted. And there comes the crunch, and then, because artists do feel for the society in which they're living, and if they think that there's something wrong going on, then they want to agitate against it. But all this it needs sustained agitation, and sustained agitation would mean necessarily that you stop painting, you stop working, you stop doing whatever you're doing. You may do the odd one, but in a sustained kind of fashion. I mean, painting or writing requires as much, or if not more, effort, concentration, and cutting everything else out. You just got to be able to focus on the work that you've got in hand, and that's enough for one lifetime, I can assure you. But nevertheless, since we are living in a society, as has been said, you cannot help feel about various things which are going wrong, which are not right, and you do agitate against them, but that's about all. Then you can agitate about them. Sometimes they're hurt, sometimes they're not. More often they're not. I mean, they don't think, it's poets saying it, or the writers saying it, and so on. It doesn't really go down. I mean, it's there as literature and meant and so on, so said. So it's there as evidence, so to speak, that these things happen. But beyond that, nothing further happens. Thank you.
Well, many years ago, about 40 years ago, I wrote my first book of Hindi criticism, in which I tried to present what I called a tragic view of literature, saying that we know that literature is no longer a force which can influence the human condition, and yet we will write as if by writing we can change the human situation. So this is a foolhardy way of looking at doing things, but we are foolhardies anyway.
Compulsions.
Now, whether the panelists would like to say anything before I open it to the House. between themselves? No? Please, now is your time. Ask questions. Yeah. Make small comments. Yes, Rishi. Yes.
Krishen Khanna sir, when you went to the war front,
Yes,
you found tragedy
yes,
and tragic situation.
yes.
But don't we have Mughal painting where the artist has been commissioned when Akbar stormed the Ranthambore
Yes,
fort or so many other battle
yes,
scenes?
yes.
So they were commissioned artists, you were not commissioned artists. Is that the difference?
No, I think there were, there are good Mughal paintings on this subject and bad ones, no?
No, I'm not talking of the quality of the painting.
No, I think
That's a battle.
Huh?
It's a battle scene
Yes.
which has been captured by the Mughal.
Yes, but it was captured in his studio. I mean, he wasn't there.
No,
on
sir.
the-
No, sir. I am told
Yeah.
that in the entourage, because the one painting which is absolutely vivid in my memory is the Ranthambore fort stormed by Akbar.
Yeah.
And that couldn't have been sitting in the studio, and there were no cameras that people
No,
would
no.
have got a photograph. He was a part of the entourage.
No, he may have gone there to witness all this. Yes,
Yeah.
it's possible. Like we went, I mean, we didn't
Yeah.
do any work there at all. I mean, we did a few sketches, I suppose, and then most of the work was done when we came back. And
No,
but no, I think it's the same tribe speaking, whether it was Akbar's this painting in Ranthambore being knocked out, or we going to Burki and so on and seeing the pillboxes. And believe me, when you saw the opponents as it was, there was no sense of any hate amongst us. I mean, if anything, they were human beings, who fell into this kind of trap or into the situation in which they were massacred or killed, whatever. But I don't think that. Not a single one of us felt that we're victorious or anything like that. It was purely the human interaction on the way.
the tragic side of the war.
It was tragic. It was actually because we say this all the time that war settles nothing, but it still goes on somehow. I mean, I think it's the beast in us.
No, sir. My impression is that earlier in medieval times, there was a conquest.
Yeah.
Today the war is not a conquest but to show the might. Because there is no territory that is conquered. In medieval times you used to annex another kingdom.
That's right.
So that difference is there. Today the war is means ultimately leads to no annexation.
No, there is no annexation.
It's only a tragedy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
No, the question really is for anyone on the panel. I do believe that what is also changing the nature of culture and politics is the advent of new communication technologies. And this is, it's so simply beyond us, because now I find that 6-year-olds are manipulating their computers and so on in ways which open up completely different perspectives. And now I don't see this as a threat, nor do I see this as some form of deliverance. But the fact is that when I saw Krishen fiddling with his mobile, I did the same thing incidentally. The fact is that a 4-year-old grandchild will now be able to manipulate these matters much better. So I don't want to make a frivolous remark, but I think the very fact that you've got now technology which is coming into a big way in mass culture particularly, but increasingly also in so-called high culture, is something that we need to look at. Just to give you one example, you can download today just about any amount of classical music that you want from the net, free of charge. All right, now where does politics or commerce come into any of this? So I truly haven't really thought this through, but there are people who've written enormously on what technology has been doing to culture. And it's not worked the other way around. We don't know if the technology has influenced, or culture has influenced technology. But we know for a fact that if only in terms of mass exposure, mass reach, right? And if you see, not that, they call it democratization. The fact is that, and I'm sorry to use the word, the number of cretinous remarks that I get on my own articles from people who are bigots. There's no other word for it. So if everyone suddenly has become a writer, because in 114 characters, you can spell out your worldview, right? And this is at the daily lot. So I don't know whether there's a comment on that possible.
I think that, there's no gainsaying that there is this enormous leap, technological leap, which is there. And works are being done, works of art are being produced in this kind of way, where there's actually the whole business of touch is given up, is not there at all. And they go on saying it's just concept. You have 4 guys sitting in front of you with their laptops. You have the master thing drawn out or something, and you say, now you do this. You work out the number of the color schemes that will function with this, blah 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 blah. What is actually lost? I mean, you produce. You go to any petrol station, for instance. There's huge pictures there. They're fantastic. I mean, this technology is done. This, I don't think 10, 20, 50 years ago this just wasn't possible. But you got this kind of super, and this is happening now. Pictures are being forged in this way, and there's a lot of sort of malpractice which is being become. But leaving that aside, I think what is being lost actually. I had a friend come in this morning, a dealer, and I was drawing, and he says nobody draws anymore. And I think it's a huge human loss, because you are short-circuiting the current, which begins from here or somewhere in the body, and then finally finds its way through your fingers to the tip of your pencil. And it's a very modest instrument that it's a part of nature. I mean, this is black and it's coming out. And the spontaneity with which things are said and done is not programmed. Whereas a lot of work you see now, which is maybe huge, gigantic, very impressive, but I think it lacks that human touch. And even there, I think what they also lack is when you paint a picture or when you're drawing, the ability to see it again and see the mistakes that you made and to rectify them. And this can go on for a long time. But in this, you've already programmed the thing, now go ahead and do it. There's no question of rectification. It might come in, I suppose. I mean, I may be wrong, because I'm not au courant with this kind of gadgetry which prevails now. Of course, what is behind it all, and the great lure is finance, is money. And it's working wonders with a lot of people who have no idea what art is, actually. They're producing stuff and doing all sorts of things. And Greenberg once said, he says, well, art can be anything, it can be a piece of art. So that's it. I mean, the boundaries are absolutely smashed.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I'm finding lately that art is really bringing about a fusion in international relations, because I find a lot of foreigners who are coming to India. They say India is the only country where these living traditions in art and culture is through millennia. And they say we want to have a guru, and we really need a guru to understand how culture has evolved in this country through centuries. And how are these kids from 6-year-old, they have a guru, they go to school, but they have a tradition of dance, and it's marvelous. Chinese, I've met Chinese, Taiwanese, German girls, Japanese girls, they're all wanting to learn our living traditions in art. And that's cementing foreign relations.
Well, tradition actually, if I may say so, tradition in this case means that the man they're looking up to as the guru is a repository of knowledge and of a traditional knowledge which is sort of accumulated in him over a period of time. So they're wanting a bit of that. They want to see that. Whereas in for instance, American society where I've been, I've lived, I've worked there as a painter, the whole thing is, how can you be different to anybody else? It's a thing which is positive, right? That you can't be like anybody else. The moment they spot something that belonged to something else, that had even a flavor of something else, is spotted, is brought out, and you are supposed to be a derivative. So a kind of individuality is so important, is over important, I think. I mean, they're not thinking of making a monument. I had a very interesting, I was there in New York, I was, I think the very next day or the day after that, I was there at a cocktail given by the Museum of Modern Art, and I was sitting next to a person just like Dileep, sitting next to me, and we were chatting, and so I didn't know him, he didn't know me. And I just been to Indonesia. I've been to Borobudur and seen these wonderful, huge temples, which knock spots of me. I mean, there was an idea that this whole thing was, and I narrated this to him. I said, I'm just coming from there and I can't get over it. That over centuries this thing was being made. And over so many generations of artists who worked and did it. I said, is there anything comparable today? I mean, is it possible? Well, the man sitting next to me was no other than Rothko, a wonderful man himself and a wonderful artist. And he came out with a great answer. I mean, a real 20th century answer. He said, now supposing, see, the supposition is there. Supposing if you could assemble all the contemporary work that's being done today in one place, maybe it would even be a bigger monument than Borobudur. So that's where the score is. You see, you can either be satisfied with a little drawing of Paul Klee, or want a gigantic thing like several people are doing these huge things. Of course, another thing was that New York itself is a huge monument. Why are we looking at one little thing?
I just want to respond very quickly. Say something to what Dileep said. This technology, and especially the new technology of communication, therefore new forms of communication and dialogue and conversation and whatnot, is amazing. This has changed the human relationships also, and the kind of revolution that is wrought in the world is not yet properly analyzed. From cell phone to TV to computers and internet, what all they have done. But there are dangers which are coming to me, the questions which really I think are important. One question is, which I asked, you can call it a sort of a school level question, though I asked this question at Harvard Business School to some of the colleagues who were talking to me, was that despite all this technological accomplishments in the world, why are you not able to create something like Taj Mahal, something like Ajanta, Ellora, all the technological accomplishments of the world and the great power that the United States of America is? Why are you not able to create this? Or pyramids or something like that? There is one aspect. The second aspect is that when you look at technology, one of the things which I see dying in front of us, that great form of human expression, is the letter writing. How many people write letters? A mail I used to understand mail something else, but now it is male, female, and email. So the real mail is gone. I mean, the correspondence is over because it is all correspondence. So the correspondence is over. These are the questions that come to my mind when I look at this technology, the technology of communication. But I still have hope because it's still, at least computers have not been able to vanquish poetry or painting. The day they can vanquish a state, I should be happier. But they should not be able to vanquish poetry or painting. That's all I think.
Dileep, you wanted?
I just wanted to respond briefly. I think it's really wonderful that so many young people from abroad are wanting to come here and learn more about our culture and so on. But I think we should be a bit lucid when we meet them, because in our own lifetime we've seen what has been our cultural trajectory. I come from Maharashtra, and I grew up really learning the Psalms of Sant Tukaram. So from Sant Tukaram we went to Nathuram. And from Nathuram we now have Asaram. This is one kind of a tragedy, and this is something which truly weighs heavily on me, because, and I completely agree with what DP says about, the sheer topicality of Sant Kabir or Sant Tukaram or any of these today. I mean, they figure in day-to-day conversations. Give me another instance where, let us say, Homer figures or Racine figures in the conversation of French. They don't. But here, a drop of a hat, we are quoting an episode from the Mahabharata, or we are quoting. So, to that extent, it's there. But the fact also is that from Sant Tukaram to Nathuram, and from Nathuram now to this Asa Ram, it's been a terrible tragedy. And at some point or the other, and there again, the technology that Asaram is using, to come back to what you've said, I mean, through that technology, you're purveying the worst kind of stereotypes that you can get. You see, everyone is now on the social media, right? I want to know of a single, I can't think of one single quotable quote that I've come across on Twitter. You see, so Twitter produces nothing. Social media produces nothing other than Asaram.
दिलीप ने जो टेक्नोलॉजी का सवाल उठाया था उस पर सोचते हुए मुझे सिर्फ एक घटना याद आ गई। आर्ट्स फैकल्टी में अपनी क्लास से निकल कर बाहर जाते हुए वहाँ सफ़ेदी करने वाले मजदूरों को मैं देख रहा था। दोपहर का वक्त हो चुका था और वो रोटी खा रहे थे और गाना बज रहा था, और मुझे हैरानी हुई कि गाना कहाँ बज रहा है। मैंने झांक कर देखा तो एक छोटा सा मोबाइल था जो सामने रखा हुआ था, और उसमें वे पुराना कोई या किसी और को सुन रहे हैं, और ये कम नहीं है। तो इसको भी हम समझें कि टेक्नोलॉजी ने किस तरह से संस्कृति को थोड़ा व्यापक कर दिया है जो पहले नहीं था।
In fact, there is a lot of things discussed about the technology. My only question is that can we avoid it, or can we say that no, let us goodbye to these emails? Or I mean, if it is not, then whether we should accept it gracefully or
Usually we don't accept it.
I think we accept it gracefully, we accept it disgracefully. It doesn't matter. The fact is, it is there in our daily lives.
Yes.
Right? And therefore, the only option we have is to make the best use of it as we think fit. Right? I mean, in the 40 odd emails I get every day, truly 38 are not worth looking at. So I just delete them. And the time spent in deleting mails is what bothers me more than anything else. I think the lead was.
Yes.
Yeah.
हाँ बोलिए।
सर जी, मुझे ये कहना था कि जैसे अब हम आज हुई पूरी चर्चा हुई जितनी भी मैं सुन पाई, भक्ति आंदोलन और स्वाधीनता आंदोलन में एक खास तरह की स्थितियां थी जहां पर कि सत्ता, राजनीति, संस्कृति में एक द्वंद्वात्मक संबंध कहीं ना कहीं राजनीति के साथ या कलाओं का या संस्कृति का कह सकते हैं। लेकिन अब जब कि हम प्रजातांत्रिक व्यवस्था में हैं, मुझे बहुत ही विडंबनापूर्ण स्थिति ये नजर आती है कि अभी भी मतलब समर्थन और विरोध के अतिरेक को छोड़कर अपने अपने हितों से ऊपर अगर कला क्षेत्र से जुड़े हुए बुद्धिजीवी अगर एक संवाद कायम करने की कहीं कोशिश नहीं हो सकती क्या? क्योंकि अभी भी जब हम जितने भी सेमिनार्स वगैरह अटेंड करते हैं वो कहीं ना कहीं या तो वो एक ही विचारधारा से जुड़े हुए लोगों को बुलाते हैं और डिस्कस होता है उसमें, है ना? लेकिन कहीं कोई ऐसे रास्ते खोजे जाए, कोई ऐसी संस्थाएं बने जहां पर कि संवाद की कोशिश की जाए अतिरेक की जगह, कहीं अगर ऐसी कोशिश हो सके।
कई बार अतिरेक से भी संवाद होता है और
वहाँ विवाद हो जाता है फिर।
विवाद भी तो संवाद का ही एक हिस्सा है।
जी जी जी, लेकिन एक कहीं पहुंचे।
हाँ। Anything else? Anybody? I think that's it. We are thanks. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll meet again on 7th November, and the topic we have thought of is coping with chaos. And we will then invite people from architecture, from cinema, from design, etc., visual arts, to see how do we cope with chaos.
You are meeting on 7th of November.
Yes.
A good date to discuss this subject.
Yes, yes, I know.
That is the day of revolution, the Russian Revolution.
Yeah, which was one way of coping with chaos.
Yes.
And then we got another topic today, culture and technology. We should have a more in-depth debate on that. So we will have that also, culture and technology. Thank you very much.
7th November, I just there is some possibility of having here, in which case,
Absolutely.
Hi. Hi, Lola.
But on technology, and then it was
आपके फैमिली के 2 लोग तो आ गए, बच्चों को सुन के शायद बोर हो गए, पर तो दूर से आ रहे हैं।
थोड़ी देर के लिए आएगा फिर।